Just give me some truth. I've had enough of watching scenes of schizophrenic, egocentric, paranoia prima donnas. All I want is the truth.
Yes, just a little truth. Is that too much to ask? You know, truth. Truth can be hard to find these days, and it's complicated. And I realize you can build a whole world upon a lie. You can build an entire life or relationship or even an entire religion based on a lie. It happens in big and small ways. I think I told this story before about the time when I was in my early 20s, and I was somewhere, and there was this gorgeous young woman, and she was standing with some friends across the room. I think it was a bar, maybe. She was standing across the room somewhere, and after a while, I noticed that she kept looking at me. And I mean, seriously, she could barely take her eyes off of me. Now, keep in mind, this was the most beautiful woman in the entire place. And so I was feeling really good in that moment. And this might surprise you, but that was not a typical experience for me. So having this undiscovered Miss America looking right at me started making me feel pretty good. I'm like, hey, this is all right. I mean, I know I should say that it was her brains I was attracted to, but our theme is truth, so I can't tell a lie. And anyway, so I'm scanning the room. I'm looking at all the other guys, and I'm thinking, wow, feeling bad for them, you know. And then I realized she was actually making eyes with a guy who was standing right behind me. I know. But for that brief moment, I was Casanova in my own mind. It was a beautiful moment while it lasted. The point is that we have misperceptions and misunderstandings all the time. And until we realize it, as far as we know, it's the truth. They say perception is 90% of reality. And looking at how divided we are these days, it seems to me that many people are perceiving the world very differently from me, very differently from one another. People are living in different truths. If you listen to how different people have assessed the first 100 days of our new president, it would seem like we're living totally different experiences. You know, when you walk out of a movie and you say, and you start talking about it, you're like, did we just see the same movie? Well, that's what the world is looking like, and it begs the question, how do we relate to people who think and believe so very differently from us? We all have neighbors, we have coworkers, we may even have family members who have beliefs and truths that are very different from our own. Some of which we might find outrageous, some of which we might find implausible, some of which we might find annoying or deeply hurtful. Here's what I've discovered. How we relate to people and their truths is a good gauge of our capacity for love. Now that's a big statement. So let me say it again, slightly different way. How we're able to relate to people who see the world differently from us is a profound indicator of our capacity for love. Here's why. There are a couple of common responses to meeting someone who sees the world differently. Some of us are debaters. We like to debate with such people. We get an intrinsic satisfaction out of poking holes in their faith and their reasoning. All the while, we're hoping deep down that we might shake them loose of what we see as their foolishness. Now, I won't make you raise your hand, but you know if you're a debater. If you invite the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons who knock on your door in just so that you can try to shake their certainty, then you are definitely a debater. If you come to family reunions and dinners armed with the latest book you've read about the inaccuracies of the Bible, then you're probably a debater. If you actually take time to respond to some of the argumentative comments on Facebook posts, then, or from your relatives or from your coworkers, then you're a debater, all right? But then there are those of us who could be called avoiders, right? Some of us prefer to just change the subject. We make the decision that not to discuss religion or politics with people who disagree with us. It's a kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy. But we're the ones who, we don't even come to the door when the Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking on the door. We'll just hide and let them keep knocking and hope that, and be like, when are they going to go away? Or when religion comes up at the holiday table, we change the subject to the NFL draft or the latest celebrity scandal or anything to change the subject. And we don't even read the comments in Facebook, or we're not even on social media. And if we are, and somebody says something we disagree with, we just unfriend them. But is there a better way? Because each of these approaches have problems. Now, I want to acknowledge that I have changed a lot in this regard. I used to be both a debater and an avoider, depending on the situation. There was a time in my life when trying to get people to start questioning their faith was like a sport. The way that I related to people who claimed to have a strong faith was that I subjected them to what could be called intellectual waterboarding. Just trying to get them to admit the flaws in their logic. I was smug and relentless, and I'm sure that I felt very superior. There's this scripture in the Bible that says, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Well, at the time, I thought 2 out of 3 wasn't bad. I wasn't very humble. Now, what I realized was that I was a fundamentalist under the illusion that I had an open mind. In fact, what I was doing was a form of proselytizing. It was something that I despised when other people did it. But think about, what is proselytizing? Proselytizing is when someone disparages someone else's beliefs and tells them that they're wrong and tries to convince them that what I believe is right and better than what you believe. It reminds me of the expression that says, choose your enemies carefully because you will become like them. Without realizing it, I was doing the same thing that I couldn't stand when other people did it. I realized that even those of us with very open-minded, pluralistic views about religion, if we're not careful, we can be just as arrogant and self-righteous as any other kind of fundamentalist, even while at the same time claiming to reject fundamentalism. And why do we reject fundamentalism? Because all fundamentalisms limit our ability to discover the truth. Because if you already know something, then you're not letting anything else in, because I already know what the truth is. It also, and the point of my message today, narrows our capacity to love. It's all in the story of the 3 blind men and the elephant. Each of the blind men touches a different part of this giant pachyderm. And so each one is absolutely convinced that his experience, that he knows, he experienced it with his own, senses, and he knows that this is the true shape of the elephant. And, the one who touches the trunk knows that it's like a big snake. The one who touches the side knows that it feels like a wall. The leg feels like a tree trunk. And they're just arguing, but they're like, I know I felt it with my own hands. I know it's not like you're saying it is. Each one's confident because they experienced it. Why wouldn't they be confident? And so all these men argue all day long because they failed to listen to one another. And because of that, they failed to discover the greater truth that was right around them. One that they think, because they think they already know the truth. But I want to take this a little bit further, and I want to talk about more than just truth, because this is also about love and our capacity to give and receive love. And the goal of life is not truth, it's love. In the covenant of All Souls that we said earlier, and we just welcome some new members into that covenant, we say we seek the truth in love. Why? Because we know that despite all of our seeking, we may never discover the capital T truth. And so even as we look for it, we do so with love. Because too often we see people who choose their truth over love. We see families and communities divided by people's beliefs. The blind men each had a very real and very authentic experience of the elephant. And it's silly to try to argue with them to deny their experience. And yet, their conclusion about what they experienced becomes problematic. Each one was so caught up in what they experienced that they couldn't even listen to anyone else. And here lies the problem and the solution. Life is made up of both experiences and our interpretation of our experiences. How tightly we hold on to our interpretations of our experiences is inversely proportionate to how close we can come to understanding the greater truth in life. In the same way, how tightly we hold on to our interpretations, our beliefs, and our opinions is inversely proportionate to our ability to love. Everything is an elephant, and all we have is our own experience. And that's why we need to be able to both share our experience and listen to other people's experiences. I mean, think about it. I mean, I understand. I come from a very specific social location. I'm an American, cisgendered male, straight, able-bodied, and I've had a chance to get higher education and all these things. So I see the world in a very specific way. And maybe somebody else, someone says, well, as a woman, I see this very differently. As somebody who lives, as an immigrant into the United States or from another country or from some other different, they might see something differently. And if I don't listen and say, no, it's not like that, you're wrong. I know you're a woman and you think you understand, but hey, I know because, I've experienced this world and I know how it is, right? We all know people like that. But if we don't listen to one another, but we also have to be willing to share what's ours. So debaters and fundamentalists, they often like to share and convince without really listening. And avoiders, they either don't listen at all, or they listen, but they don't have the courage to share their truth. So both of these strategies leave us blind in the sense of being able to fully love or fully understand the truth. A better way is to be an encounterer. We need to be willing to encounter one another and even people who see the world very differently from us, and especially people who see the world very differently than us. That means to be willing to be both courageous and humble, to share our truth, and to listen to other people's truths with openness, knowing that their truth is based in some experience that they have had. Now, I don't want us to get confused that listening to others with respect, listening to others to try to seek understanding of what it is that brought them to the conclusions that they have is very different from agreeing with them or condoning their decisions and interpretations. And yet, if we fail to share our truth or fail to listen authentically to other people's truths, then we can miss something that's really important. There's an expression that every oyster has a pearl in it. And it's that idea of looking for the pearl. What is it? I know that this is different. I know that I don't like this, but what's behind it? Is there something I can learn from what this person is saying? So let me make this a little more specific. If you're married, your marriage is an elephant. You see it one way, your spouse sees it another way. I can remember times in my own marriage when, my wife and I would get into these arguments trying to convince each other that our interpretation of our marriage was the right one, instead of actually listening to each other to find out what the other person was experiencing so that we could understand how to better love and have a better relationship. I mean, I was sure I was right. And I thought, for example, if I thought our marriage is just fine, what are you talking about? And my wife's like, well, there's something, I'd like some things to be a little different. It's not the best marriage, or it's not, this or that. And I'm like, honey, our marriage is just fine. And then I would list all the ways that our marriage is just fine, thinking that, if she saw the list, she'd go, oh gosh, you're right. Look at that. But that didn't work really well, as you can imagine. So it's the same with our relationships with our children or our siblings or our parents or even our coworkers. Our capacity to listen and respect and understand other people's truths is directly related to our ability to love. Our willingness to share our truths and our experiences, to be vulnerable and to be honest and open, is also directly connected to our capacity to love. So our lives and our relationships begin to improve exponentially to the degree that we're able to learn to live in such a way that we remember that everything is an elephant and we are all blind, and we get to see a piece, but we don't get to see it all. Someone else I knew said it's like a beach ball. If you're holding a beach ball, you can only see the side that you can see. You can't see the other side. You need other people to kind of help see what does the beach ball look like? What does this world really look like? And it means that other people's experiences are valid and true, and they deserve to be shared and honored just like ours, and yet be humbled enough to know that our experiences are limited by time and culture and language and 10 million and one other things. I mean, one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that our senses, our five senses, they help us experience the world, but they also limit and filter the world, right? So we can see. There are colors. There are other animals, insects, and things that can see more colors than we can see. There are our own dog can smell and hear things that we can't even hear. There's infrared right here, right now, and we can't see it. Does that mean it's not real? No, it's real, and we just can't see it. And there's Wi-Fi flying through here. We don't see it. Radio waves are going through here. We don't see them. And so we have to keep in mind that our senses help us experience the world and experience reality, but they also limit our bandwidth of what we can actually experience. We're not experiencing reality. We're experiencing the part of reality that our bodies allow us to experience. So it gives us the formula to seek the truth in love. So I hope that my hope for you, for all of us, is that in these fraught and very divided times when people are just, families are breaking up, relationships are breaking up, our democracy feels like it could be breaking up over our differences, that you will consider not being such a debater or an avoider, but strive to also be an encounterer as much as you can, at least some of the time. I realize I'm not trying to say to everybody, you need to encounter everybody and be vulnerable and bare your soul to everyone and listen to every, idiot on the streets. I'm not saying that. Goethe, the philosopher, said, say it to someone wise or keep your silence. Say it to someone wise or keep your silence. It's better sometimes to not get into the conversation than to be in a conversation with someone that doesn't have some basic wisdom, that doesn't know some of the basic things that we're talking about here, about being able to listen, being able to recognize that you don't know everything. And so I just want to make sure that even as I say we need to encounter people, we need to be open to people who are different from us, it's also really important before you bear your truth before somebody that you also know that the person has some basic wisdom, some basic compassion as well, that they could hear it and actually be in a real conversation with you. But just keep in mind that the whole world is an elephant, and the purpose of life is not to know the truth. The purpose of life is love. Friends, truth is not dead. It's just hiding in our differences. I love you. Thank you.